Hi everyone, in this session we will see how to configure GitLab CI CD pipeline. I have my simple Spring REST application where you can see that I have a controller class, user controller with post, put and get mapping. These are very simple endpoints, and I also have the same thing here in the GitLab repository. I have configured it and I only have the master branch. Okay, so if you look at the repository here, we don't have any configuration related to CI CD pipeline. Okay, so to start with, GitLab provides us two main features of configuring the pipeline. One is through enable Autodevops. You can see that there is an option called enable Autodevops. So what this does is it gives you the default features of configuring a pipeline with all the required jobs within it. Okay, you don't need to do any configurations. If you enable this for the project, it is going to trigger for any commits or any merge that you make to the application. It is going to trigger the Autodevops pipeline. Okay, and the second feature is to configure the GitLab is to have a Git YML file, that is GitLab CI CD YML file. That is how you can have a control over what are the jobs that you need in the pipeline. That is, you can call it as custom CI CD pipeline. So you can see there is another option that says setup CI CD. Okay, when you click on this, it will take you to a page where it says GitLab CI YML file. So here is where you can write all your jobs. Okay, and then what it is going to do is whenever you do a commit to the application, it will check for the configuration file. If it is present in the root folder of the application, it is going to pick that. Okay, if not, and if there is an Autodevops enabled, it's going to trigger this. Okay, so we're going to look at both the options here. First, let's go with the zero configuration, that is enable Autodevops. Okay, so remember that, so for any pipeline to be picked up or to run, okay, we need to have a runner configured in our GitLab CI. Right, so for that what we have to do is, I am currently logged in as a team lead user. Let me sign out and log in as a root user. And if you go to the admin area, you can see that there is an option called runners. Now if you go to the runners option, and for the demo I already have a runner configured, but I will show you how to configure GitLab Runner from the start. But for now, just see that we have one GitLab Runner already configured, but it is in a pause state. Okay, it's not running. I have paused it. So let's try to push a change to the GitLab repository. We'll go with all the steps that we discussed in our previous session. That is, when a developer pushes the changes to the repository, and then how the pipeline gets triggered and all those steps. So for now, what I'll do is I'll keep the GitLab Runner as is. I will not start it. And this is where you basically configure your GitLab Runner. Fine. So let's look at the very first step, that is with zero configuration. Okay, before that, what happens when you don't have any runner configured? Definitely the job is not going to be triggered. That means as there is no runner configured, what will happen is even though you push the changes, nothing is going to happen, right? So let's take a look at that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a method here. Before that, let's do one thing is we have only one branch. So for that, let's create another branch called develop. And okay, I don't see that project in here. I should be able to see it. Yeah, okay, here it is. Which one was it? I guess yes, this one. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another branch. New branch. I'll create as develop. Okay, so even though we created, see, we made a change to the repository, nothing happened, right? No pipeline was triggered. Now let's go back to our admin area, and in the runners, I'll resume the runner. Okay, now the runner is running. Now let's do another commit. What I'm going to do is I'll create another branch. Okay, I'm on the wrong branch here. Sorry, wrong project. It is this. Okay, now here what we did, we created a branch. Let's create another branch and see what happens. I'll create another branch, and I would say this as test. Now create branch. Okay, so this time do we have, let's go back to our repository here. Okay, let's see if our Autodevops is enabled. So default to DevOps pipeline, we have not enabled it, right? So let's save the changes. Okay, now if we go back to our project, and you can see that the pipeline was triggered. So now if we look at the pipeline, what it does is, these are the default stages, you can call, or jobs that gets enabled when you do an Autodevops feature that you enable in your GitLab. So with zero configuration, what we achieved is we have now a pipeline configured in the GitLab CI. So these are the jobs that get triggered, like it does the build for you, it does a code quality check, then secret detection, spot bugs, statistics, and finally the test. So all these things is enabled when we do, when we enable the Autodevops option. So in real time, you won't be using this feature, though it is a zero configuration, but you would like to have a more control over your pipeline, right? The jobs that you want to trigger, you want to have more control over it. So for that, what we need to do is we need to create a file here, the configuration file. All right, so what I'm going to do is once the job is completed, I will disable the Autodevops here. I'll go back and disable it. Okay, and you can see that this was triggered because we have the runners. Okay, the runner is also running. Okay, and whenever there is a change committed to the pipeline, to the repository, what happens is the runner comes into action and picks up the pipeline, that is the jobs. Okay, so let's save this, and I'm disabling the Autodevops. And if I go back to the project overview, here's where what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the develop branch, and here I'll create a file. That is, I can create a file, or if I go to the root repository here and change it to develop. Okay, let's do this. Let's create a file from here itself. Okay, here it will ask me for the template. I'm going to use the GitLab CI/YML file, and I'll name it as GitLab CI.yml, and it's going to be, the target branch is going to be develop. Now if I commit this, look at what happens. Okay, okay, so this is because of the pipeline of the Autodevops, which we don't worry about, because there might be few things that the Autodevops might be looking for, which we don't have in our pipeline, in our code repository. Okay, so for now, let's go back to our repository where we have the GitLab YML. Currently it is empty, there is nothing within it. So let's try to add a simple um, job to this and see how, and then we commit what happens. Okay. So in the IDE, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to switch to the develop branch. For that, what I need to do is, first thing, I need to pull all the branches. So I have now the references, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull. Okay, so if you look at okay, so I have all the 3 branches. So I'm going to switch to the develop branch, check out to the new local branch, and finish. Now I have the develop branch. Okay, so here if you see here, I now have the GitLab CI YML file. So what we'll do is we'll start adding the task here, that is the jobs. So I'll start with a very simple job, that is test. So what I'm going to do is, first thing is we need to define the stages. So you're saying the stages is something that you will say that, okay, how many jobs you will be having in your pipeline. Okay, so for that I'll just say test. Okay, so this is how the syntax of a YML file looks. Okay, whenever there is an array, then what you do is you just give a hyphen and then you can add all those parameters here. So for this stages, I have one task or job, that is test. Then here again I can have like something build, okay, and so on. Okay, so now we just have test, so I'm going to use, I can keep the build stage as is. Okay, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to say unit test, and here I'll say that this is a stage of test. So remember that you can have this stage name whatever you want, but when you say stage belongs to, okay, this job belongs to which state, that is what we have to give here. So this should match the one that you have declared in the stages. Okay, so next what I do is I would say I would run a script. Okay, this being a Maven application, I want to run a Maven goal. So for that I would say the script, again the script is, these are all the keywords. Okay, remember that not the name, but the one that you are using here, these are the keywords that are used by the GitLab CI configurations. Okay, so here and you can find these keywords when you go to the GitLab documentation. You can get familiar with each of these keywords and get a more detailed understanding over there. So here we have script, and in the script we are going to give Maven test. Okay, and if you are if you're thinking to use, instead of using Maven command, okay, that means you are the Docker container that is going to run this, in which this is going to run, that needs to have Maven installed in it, right? So this is how it's going to be, right? Whenever you commit a change to the repository, the GitLab Runner is going to pick this job and run within a container, right? And that container, when you're trying to run the script, needs to have the Maven installed within it. The other option is you can also use something that we already have in our project, that is Maven wrapper, right? For this, when you're using Maven wrapper, you don't need to install Maven on your you don't need to have a Maven installed image to run your script, right? You can use the wrapper itself. But what we are going to do is, instead of using the wrapper, we are going to use the Maven command, and there needs to be a little change. Okay, here we'll come back to that, but we'll see what happens when we push the changes to the GitLab repository, and when the pipeline triggers. So let's see what happens, with what exception it fails. Okay, so the script is a Maven test. That is what the goal is for the unit testing. Then what I'm going to do is, okay, I'll keep this very simple for now. Okay, and then I'll also remove this to keep it more simple. And then I'll commit this. Okay, I don't have anything in the GitLab. I don't think so I have anything. Okay, that's fine. And then I would say initial commit for the GitLab CI YML. Okay, it's pushed. Let's go back here. And let's look at the DevOps. Okay, so it's running. You can see that initial commit for the GitLab CI for the develop branch. If I click on this, it is picked up by our GitLab Runner. Okay, so you can see that we can go to the jobs, like, you know, if when it is the pipeline, if you go to the CI CD, you can see that what are the pipelines that are running, and the one that we just triggered, or the one that just got triggered, is this. We can click on it and it will show you that, okay, how many jobs we have in the pipeline. So we just have one, that is unit test. That's what will show here. When you click on it, you can see the console of the job. So if you see here, let's go by looking at the details of the console. It says using Docker executor with image Ruby. So by default, the container or the image that is going to be used is Ruby 2.6. Okay, so it pulls that, and then what it does is it pulls our repository, that is our code, and then what it does is then we have the script, the one that we have in the CI file, that is YML file. And what it does is it failed. See, it says Maven command not found. The reason why is because the Ruby image does not have Maven installed in it. So how do we fix this? So we go back to our our YML file, and what we say is, instead of using the default image, we tell the runner to use a different image, the one that already has Maven in it. Okay, so you can have, depending on your job or task, you can specify the image. So where this image is downloaded from, it gets downloaded from the public hub, that is the Docker hub. Okay, so let's give the image here. Again, we have a keyword called image, and here I'm going to specify the Maven image. And for Maven to run, it also needs the OpenJDK, right? It needs the JDK installed on the Docker. So we are going to use an image that has both. Okay, so it is 3.6.3 OpenJDK 11 Slim. So this is the image name that has Maven as well as OpenJDK in it. So let's save this and commit this. And I would say this. Let me just cross check if everything looks good. Okay, this should be 3.6.3 OpenJDK Slim. Okay, now it looks good. Let's say Maven changes. And if I commit and push, that's done. Let's go back to our pipeline, and you can see that another pipeline got triggered. Let's look at the console now, and now you can see that using Docker executor with image Maven OpenJDK 11 Slim. So instead of Ruby 2.6, now it's using Maven OpenJDK 11. So let's see what happens with all the when the script runs, that is Maven test, and you can see that job succeeded. Okay, that was really quick because we don't have much of unit test to run. If you look at if you go back to our unit test, let's see what we have here. Okay, we have only 2 test classes. Okay, yeah, we just have 1 class here, so that's what we see in our console, that is 2 test run 2, failures are 0, and the build was successful, job succeeded. So things that you need to remember here is, you can, whenever a job runs, okay, the exit code that depending on the exit code, your job will either fail or pass. Okay, if it fails, what happens is, if you have another job in your pipeline, that will not be triggered. Okay, you can configure it in that way. If you want to say that, okay, you can say that even if the job fails, trigger the next job. You can have all those configuration, but remember that if there is any failure, then most likely that we won't be triggering the next job in the pipeline. Okay, and during the when the job is running, you can also configure a few other things, like you can configure job artifacts. Okay, where you can have the scope of the artifacts. Now, what these artifacts are, assume that whenever this Docker run completes, okay, what happens? The Docker is also the instance of the Docker container is also stopped, right? So whatever we have in this container is lost, right? That's what the Docker container, that's how it works. Anything that runs within it, once it is completed, the instance is stopped, and all the resources within it are also lost. But using job artifacts, what we can do is we can save the resources that gets generated during the when the Docker container is running. For example, we ran here map and test, right? So if you look at the map and test here, what are the resources that get generated? If you look at the target file, the target folder, let's run that same thing here. I will run the JUnit. Okay, let's run the build, and I would say the same thing that we get, clean test. Okay, let's run this. So the build is successful. The same, similar output that we saw in our console here. And if you refresh this, you can see that there is a target folder created, and in this we have something called surefire reports. Here is where you can get the report of your unit test. So this artifact is something that you can save in your here, which you can browse later. Okay, so let's do that. Let's add even the artifacts. Okay, here what I'm going to do is, and that will be in your keyword called artifacts. And I would say, when do you want to create the artifacts? I would say always. There is an option when you want to say that, okay, when the job fails, you don't want to create the artifacts. Okay, and if you want to create artifacts always, that means even if the job fails, you want to create. If it is successful, you want to create the artifacts. That's what this always means. Next, we have the paths. Okay, I have to tell, okay, where exactly this artifact is going to be created. This is going to be created, again, it's an array of options that it takes, and I would say this gets created in the target folder, and the folder name is surefire reports. Okay, fine. And I can also give another option called JUnit, or you can say reports. Okay, and this is something that GitLab is going to use, okay, and recognize it as a JUnit. Okay, that's what we are trying to specify when we say JUnit here. And I would say I will take this, and in this folder I will take all the XML files. So for that we have star.xml file. Okay, and I can also give the expiry for the artifacts. I don't want to give this forever. Like by default, the GitLab holds it for 7 days, I think, but we don't want to keep it for for that long. We want to have these artifacts only for like 30 minutes or 60 minutes. Okay, so let's give that by using expire in keyword, and I would say 30 minutes. Okay, so with this we have now the artifacts configured. Let's push this. I would say artifacts changes. Okay, so this is committed. Let's go back to our pipeline. Okay, it's running. And let's see now. Currently don't see any artifacts here. Once it is completed, the task, you can see the artifacts here. Okay, so the job is completed. Now you can see that we have job artifacts, which you can see here. You can browse it. If you browse, you can see the surefire reports, and here is where you can have all the artifacts. You can view them. You can download the artifacts and go through the unit test results. And one more thing that you get, when you say reports, if you go back to your pipeline here, the last pipeline, and you can see that we have test, right? There is an option called test, and if you click on this, it will give you all the information of the unit tests that were executed, right? So that is something that is very handy that you can have when you mention it as reports. Okay, so with that, we have successfully configured our very first pipeline with a very simple job. And this job was picked up by the GitLab Runner, which we already had in our configured in our GitLab. So in the next session, what we're going to see is we're going to learn how to configure a GitLab Runner. Okay, if you're doing this from the very start where you don't have any GitLab Runner configured, we'll see that how we configure the GitLab Runner in our GitLab CI. Okay, hope that is clear, and all the things that we discuss is also clear. That's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next session. Till then, take care. Thank you.